and Lord Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra. It's going okay, Vilga? Streaming?
Yes.
Okay. So I hope this streaming works. Yeah, this is the microphone, Vilga, you've got. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Taralaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha Yam Pravajantamanapetya Krityam Dvaipaino Varaha Katara Ajubhava Putreti Tammayatayo Tarabo Vinindustam Sarvabhutam Munimanatoshmi. I'm first of all offering millions and millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nityalila Pravishta Om Astautar Zarashishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again, millions and millions of times unto the lotus feet of our most beloved Nityalila Pravishta Om Astautar Zarashishimad Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And all our illustrious Rupanuga Guru Vargya, and all the Vaishnavas and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, my Dandavat pranams to all of you. So we're still doing our chapter 11, and we'll begin with the Falshruti. We'll start at the beginning of the Falshruti. I'll just sing the first verse, Bilba, to give you the meter, remind you of it. Pritivite iyatakata dharmana nechale bhagavatakaye shava paripurana chale. As indicated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.1.2, all the philosophies on earth that are celebrated as dharma are utterly deceptive. As I've said many, many times, this is a very bold statement. But Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja aham tam sarve papabhyo mokshayishyami vasucha. Abandon all varieties of religion. This means abandon all dharmas that are not focused on nitya dharma. So teaching through this, these first 12 chapters, as I said last time, are about sambandha gyan. And if we look at these first 12 chapters, it's very interesting. Sambandha basically means relationship. Of course, in the first chapter, the three vastus are enumerated, the Jiva, Krishna, and Maya. And what is the relationship between them? This is what really Sambandha Gyan means. But also Sambandha means the relationships between the devotees and Guru, etc. So in the first two chapters, it's Guru-Shishya relationship with Sannyasi Thakur and Premdas Babaji. And Premdas Babaji also introduces us to his guru, Pradumnya Babaji. So that's the first two chapters. And then the next two chapters are a conversation between, now Sannyasi Thakur has become Vaishnava Das, or Vaishnava Das Babaji. So now the conversation is between Vaishnava Das taking the role of guru with Lahari Mahashai. So these are the first four chapters. 2 and then 2. And now the next two chapters, bringing us up to chapter 6, are again a relationship between Lahari Mahashai and his son, Devi Das. So Devi Das in chapter 5, he appears very favorable, but then he sees how the Vaishnavas are so accommodating with the Muslims that he becomes bewildered and disturbed. And he brings back a whole entourage of Brahmins, Chudimani, etc., Chudamani. So then again, it's the relationship between Lahari Mahashai and Devi Das. So that's 2, 4, 6 chapters. Then the 7th chapter is Chandidas and Damayanti and their relationship with Yadava Das, who's a senior Vaishnava, and they take, Yadava Das takes Damayanti and Chandidas across the river to see Anantadas Babaji. So again, it's all of these teachings are couched in relationships, because these first 12 chapters are all about relationships. And then in the 9th chapter, so that's the 7th chapter, sorry, the 8th chapter, then it's about Nityananda Das Babaji. And they're discussing again Vaishnava etiquette. What is Kanishta? What is Madhyam? What is Uttam Bhakta? And all this discussion is very, very beautiful. This is in the 8th chapter. So then the 9th chapter, again, it's relationship between Lahari Mahashai and Digambar, a complete corrupted materialist who's flaunting Muslim truths, etc., and supporting them. And then in the 10th chapter, there's Nayaratna, and he comes to challenge Babaji about the history, the authenticity of the history, and Vaishnava Das Babaji again is going to speak. So all of these chapters, they're all couched in relationships, sambandha, what is our relationship? And all these teachings are coming through these connections. I've just said all that, those different chapters, to give us an overview, just like in Srimad Bhagavatam. We work through the overviews of the chapters to try and get the complete picture. So we learn in the first canto, and then the 10 chapters of the second canto, etc., the different relationships within them. This gives us what we say, like a more confident perspective of the entirety of the subject matter. When you get the grand overview, then you see, where is Bhaktivinoda Thakur taking us? What does he want us to imbibe? What is the heart? What is the essence of this teaching? So now we're in the 11th chapter, and the 11th chapter is, but we're not going there yet. We're going to do some more fell shooting. But the 11th chapter is about the Muslims, Islam. So this is another aspect of relationship. How do we relate with the Muslims? So it's all in the package, we can say, of sambandha. Even though we know complete sambandha is Krishna, the Jiva, and Maya. So just Krishna, the Jiva, and Maya has many facets to it, because Krishna is within the heart of all Jivas. So when, for example, Sannyasi Thakur is relating with Prem Das Babaji, how is that relationship connecting with the Supreme Lord, with Krishna? All of these relationships are ultimately connecting with the Supreme Lord, because that's all the subject matters are about. So it's all elevating our consciousnesses to that place. So that's in the 11th. And then in the 12th chapter, we are introduced to the hero, more or less, of the next 12 chapters, which is Brajanath. And Brajanath is going to meet Raghunath Das Babaji. And this is like an introduction to another character. So we see that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is so brilliant in portraying and painting these various characters in this. I used to read when I was younger, or I read when I was younger, practically all of the Charles Dickens books in English literature, and was thinking then that Charles Dickens was the greatest master of character, portrayal. But then I came to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and he excels even that, really and truly. The graphic characters that he describes, and the depth of the characters, of course, that he describes. So then in the 12th chapter, we're going to sit with Brajanath and Raghunath Das Babaji. Then the 13th chapter, it'll scroll right through until the 22nd chapter, all Das Mula topics, going from 3 chapters about Krishna, 3 chapters about Jiva, then Achintya Veda Veda Tattva, then what is Sadhan Bhakti, then what is Priti Bhakti, and what is the Praman at the beginning. This is in chapter 13. So we're trying to get an overview. This is why I'm saying all this now today, just to lay a sort of encouragement for us all to get to know this granta, to get to know all the different characters and how it's panning out. Okay, so the second Falshruti, Bilvaji, will you chant?
Yes. Chala dharma chadikara satya dharme mati chaturvargatya jidhara nitya prema gati.
one should completely abandon all deceptive dharmas and absorb his mind in true dharma. In other words, one should give up the fourfold goals of material life, dharma, artha, karma, moksha, and aspire solely for the ultimate destination of nitya prem. So in this second verse, he's continuing the same thread from the first verse, but he's opening up and making it more specific. Okay, verse 3.
अमित्वमिमां सभ्रमे निजे जड बुद्धि निर्विशेष ब्रह्म ज्ञाने न हे चित्त शुद्धि.
Those who are deluded identify themselves with matter. That is their error. Now, everyone's deluded because everyone's under the illusion of being the material body. When we think about how powerful Maya Devi's illusion is, how many people do we know that actually are not on the bodily platform? Gurudev. And we've heard about Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. But really and truly, this understanding is so rare. Even we hear it for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Still, when we get in the freezing shower in the middle of winter, we're still thinking, I am the body. And relating to that, it's very, very difficult to actually jump off that bodily platform as far as all our material attachments are concerned. We can't do it. Therefore, it's only Krishna's mercy and Guru's mercy that will enable us to reach that very, it's actually not a difficult platform to reach with Guru's mercy. With Guru's mercy, we can appreciate that I'm not, because the extent of our attraction to Krishna has built so high. This paramdrisvarna vartante, this higher taste, coupled with the mercy of Guru, and of course, when we say Guru, this means our Guru Parampara. Guru is the embodiment of, in our case, Srila Bhakti Bhagavan Keshav Maharaj, and then Srila Bhakti Sarana Saraswati, Srila Gokishore Das Babaji, Srila Bhakti Sarana Saraswati, etc., all the way back to Rupa Goswami. So this is who is Guru. Guru is the embodiment of all of these personalities. They have their own natural Vaishishya specialities, but they're all one. They're all essentially one because they all have the same desire that Krishna has. Krishna's desire is to relieve us from this conditioned illusion state of being covered by Maya. So they all have the same desire, so they're all one. And Guru is one with Krishna, Sakshat Vitali, Nasamasta Shastra, because they have the same desire. So when we appreciate that more fully, then we can shake these fetters of Maya a little bit loose. But it still has to be navigated through. Okay, fourth.
Ivi chitrarata hina hale nirvisheshahai kalas simulaya seha aprakatanai.
The Mayavadi thinks Sri Krishna to be subject to the limitations of time, such as birth and death, and considers that he is not transcendental. How can they think otherwise? Maya Vad, someone who supports Maya. Vad is a person who speaks about supports the illusion, the illusory world by his activities in his life, etc. But how can we break beyond? We've discussed many times in our Jaiva-Dharma classes about this achintya bhav. Why is it achintya? Because it's inconceivable to the conditioned consciousness. It's beyond this three-dimensional world. It's in the fourth, fifth, sixth dimension. It's beyond here. So we can't conceive it. It's inconceivable. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says this inconceivable bhav must be there in the Vaishnava to progress. And I've said many times we can see the examples in children. Children are always resonating this achintya bhav. Everything is astonishing to a child. Chamatkar, this is another word for achintya bhav. This chamatkar means astonishing. We have that chamatkar chandrika, the astonishing pastimes of that Chandradev, that moon of Vrindavan, Sri Krishna. So we must break out of these restrictive boxes and embrace this mood of achintya bhav to go forward. Okay, last verse, fifth verse.
Khanda.
Oh no, I didn't finish the translation.
Yes,
Sorry,
got it.
sorry. Thus he rejects Sri Bhagavan's Vichitrata, astonishing characteristics. Yeah, this is what I was saying. His astonishing characteristics. If we can't hold on to his astonishing characteristics, we can't ever understand these matters, but we can appreciate these matters. If we try to understand these matters, we'll be just dumbfounded. That's like empiricists. We are trying to appreciate the magnitude of Krishna's. We just the other day did the 6th chapter of the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And Shukadev Goswami is sharing with us practically the whole lineage of all the personalities in Swagaloka, all the progenitors, all their children, etc. And it's just astonishing to appreciate the extent of the information that can be given to us about Swagaloka. It's as if Shukadev Goswami is really and truly taking us to Swagaloka. He says, look, here is Vinita, the mother of Garud, yes, and Hanumanji, Vayu, and all the other personalities, and all of their children, all the lineages. So already we've been taken in the Bhagavatam beyond this little material planet, but now we want to go right beyond this Brahmand. And the only way to go beyond this Brahmand is connect with that person from whose lotus feet this Brahmand originated ultimately, which was Brajendrananda and Shyam Sundar. So that's just the metaphysical kind of path. But it's fascinating that this path consists of the quality of love. It only consists of that quality of love and affection. Therefore, it's not Gyan. It's not karma kanda, because that's something desiring. Brahma bhuta prasanatmana sochati na kanchati. There's no suffering, no lamentation beyond there. So this is the very comforting, peaceful to appreciate this quality of only love and affection. So there's no stress, there's no disturbance, there's no anxiety, like we have the complete contrary nature here in this material world. Everything is aggravated, everything is agitated all around us. People's minds are crazy, you know. Okay, Bhuvaji, last on this page. Kanda Gyani.
Yes. Kanda Jnani he dharma ache sunishchaya prakrita haile kabu aprakrita naya.
I still didn't finish that translation of the last verse. I just jumped ahead.
Last sentence.
Astonishing characteristics, paraphernalia, qualities, and lila. Lila important. Through this vicious attempt, he is left with the philosophy of Nirvishesh Brahma. Unless you embrace the Vaishishya, the speciality, the variegatedness of Krishna, you're only left with Nirvishesh Brahma. So now the one you've just read, such base and contemptible gyan, which arises out of an attempt to dismember the divine form of Bhagavan, is only fit to be rejected. It is prakrita, materialistic, and should never be given credence as aprakat dharma. We should know how to distinguish between these dharmas, that these whole 6 verses we've just read are all enumerating from the first verse to give up all these naimitic dharmas and to seek that nitya dharma. That is so Bhaktivinoda Thakur has to nudge us onto this path to keep us there solid. So now in my book, I'm on page 250, and there's a verse, Shama, yata yatamatma pri mrijayate so.
Yes.
If you can find it, you got that verse?
Yes.
Okay. So we're close to that place, but we're just a little bit before there, okay. And then you can do the Sanskrit when we reach there. So this pastime here, because we haven't done this class for, I think, 2 days, Sunday, Monday. So 2 days we haven't actually been doing it. So by the way, for the various viewers in different parts of the world, I've shifted from Godram Dweep to Puri Dham to see the wonderful return festival of Lord Jagannath, which will be tomorrow. Lord Jagannath will be making his way back from the Gundicha, back to the Mandir, and I chose to come at this particular time to have his darshan. And we have two very beautiful devotees here, and more devotees are coming afterwards to support our Jaiva-Dharma continuation. So this is Bilgamangala Thakur from Bangalore and his dear wife, Shamadidi from Bangalore are helping in this. So, yes, in this chapter 11, the Mula, it's such a fascinating chapter because it's really enlightening the Vaishnavas, reminding them what is the purity of deity worship, because he's been challenged. This Gaurachandra Das Babaji is the Babaji who's speaking here, and he's been challenged by the Mula. The pastime is, of course, that they were all assembling for the festival at the Vishnu Priya Mandir, and where of the Thakurji that Vishnu Priya worshipped of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Navadvip, and all the different Vaishnava groups from Mamgachi, from Nrsimhapali, from Godrundvip, from Mayapur, they've all assembled these groups, and then they've started their recitation of Chaitanya Bhagavat, and just when they began, then all these Muslims came on their beautiful stallions and horses, and they very politely were asking in a very submissive manner to please explain them some truths about Krishna. They had some bewilderment. The person who's asking the questions, the mullah, he's actually a scholar, and he ultimately knows the supreme truth, but he needs more teaching, more preaching too. And this is called Sadhu Sangha. He is taking Sadhu Sangha in the association of Gaurachandra, and there's 4 other Vaishnavas, and the setting was very beautifully described. And I'm just waiting for a painting of this with all the royal stallions of the Muslims on one side, and maybe 50 Muslims, very pucker in their silk kurtas and jewelry and everything. On the other side, 4 simple, radiant Babajis. And behind them, many Hindus, we can say, local people have come to listen. So it's a big arena. They didn't have microphones, but they would have the capacity to speak very loudly so that everyone would hear. Shukadeva Goswami didn't have a microphone, but his teachings went right around the world. So there's another frequency that we've forgotten that we can tune into actually through science and so on. Okay, so in the Green Book, we're up to page 250, and I'm going to start from the first paragraph down, the form of Parameshwara. So I'll recap what I read, and then we'll carry on reading through here. The form of Parameshwara is revealed to the Mahajans through their trance of unalloyed Gyan Yoga, and they meditate on that pure transcendental form in their hearts, which is purified by bhakti. When the bhakta's heart is revealed to the world after his continuous meditation, the image of the Lord's transcendental form is fashioned in this mundane world. In other words, this deity is not a figment of mundane imagination, because the whole contention is, like in Islam, they don't have any form of Allah. You're not even allowed to make a picture of Allah. This is considered offensive. So the mullah, he's been completely indoctrinated with this idea that Allah doesn't have a form. Therefore, it's Nirvishesh Brahm. And this is tragic, because so many people in the world today, if they haven't come in touch with the Vaishnavas, the only other path to go is towards the Brahmajyoti, back into the Brahmajyoti where we've come from, this Shantaras. Shantaras is the most sought for mood that people in this world are seeking, peace, because the world is so chaotic. But that way you will go into the Brahmajyoti, become very peaceful in the Brahmajyoti, have no more misery, no more lamentation. But there's no Krishna, there's no Sambandha, there's no relationship. It's just you alone. And whatever your imagination is of this, the Brahmajyoti is an extension of the Lord, it's his effulgence. But there's no personal contact. Even the yogis who achieve Paramatma, their relationship is very limited. Paramatma connection is very limited. They go to a place called Siddhaloka, just on the other side of the Viraja River. It's the first planetary system, but it's across the Viraja River, Siddhaloka, and it's where all the yogis go. But there's no rasa. It's still Shantaras, because even you go to Vaikuntha, it's still, there's Shantaras, Dasyaras, and a little bit of Sakyaras. But that Dasyaras and Sakyaras takes us to, we don't go to Vaikuntha, otherwise we'll stay there forever. None of these planetary systems we go to, it's not like a gradation. You go from here to Goloka Vrindavan if that is your focus. You don't, because the Staibab is fixed in those different places. We're not like Gopkumar. Gopkumar had a mantra, and Sanatana Goswami was walking us through all the different stages and so on. But we have to set our compass on the focus on the goal, which is Radhadasyam ultimately, which is a very, very, very high goal. But it comes from appreciating this platform that Bhaktivinoda Thakur is so graciously creating for us. He's making this platform for us. When the Bhakta's heart is revealed to the world after his continuous meditation, the image of the Lord's transcendental form is fashioned in this mundane world. The divine form of the Lord, having been reflected in that way by the Mahajans, has become the form of the deity. So beautiful explanation. The deity form is always Chinmaya, spiritual and conscious, for those who are on the highest platform of eligibility. That means we totally immerse ourselves in Thakurji. Thakurji is non-different for the Vaishnava's seva, non-different completely. Those on the intermediate level see the deity as endowed with perception and awareness, manomaya. This means that the intermediate devotee has faith that the deity is conscious of his thoughts and prayers and accepts his mood of worship. However, the intermediate devotee, unlike the advanced devotee, does not directly perceive the deity as the spiritual all-conscious form of Bhagavan. That's interesting. Because the intermediate devotee doesn't understand the all-conscious form of Bhagavan. That's why. That's the reason why the Madhyam, he doesn't fully, it's only the Uttam that fully understands the all-conscious form of Bhagavan. So only the Uttam, the Madhyam, is progressing to that level of consciousness. However, the intermediate devotee, unlike the advanced devotee, does not directly perceive the deity as the spiritual, all-conscious form of Bhagavan. Those on the lowest level initially see the deity as material, Jadamaya, but in time the deity reveals his pure spiritual form to the intelligence purified by spiritual love. Yes, everything is descending. This process of Avaroha Panta. Avaroha Panta, never Aroha Panta. Aroha Panta is climbing higher. By my energy, I will crack the gates of heaven. Never. This Avaroha Panta, Ava like avatar. We can remember that easily, descending. So this mercy is descending. The devotees are always most dinhin, most humble, and always this mood of humility will attract those divine personalities. Because that means, just like if we meet a very submissive, humble person. Actually, just as a side note, when I was on the train coming from Navadvip to Krishnanagar to Calcutta a couple of days ago, I came on the local train. It was jam-packed solid, horrible. I wouldn't advise any devotee to go on that train. Anyway, I had a suitcase, was up in the roof rack, the rack, and I had not a good health, so I couldn't bring it down. So I requested this one clean-looking person next to me to please help me. He was so accommodating and so friendly. He spoke good English. He told me he was a policeman. And then he took my bag, my suitcase, he helped me get down the stairs and took my suitcase so respectfully. along the long platforms. All these platforms in India are very long. They have to hold 20 coaches sometimes, so many. So it was a long walk. So I couldn't actually even drag my bag so well. I even gave him my little backpack to carry. And he was doing it with such pleasure. And at the end, he told me his name, Asif Shah. He was a Muslim policeman. And Krishna must have made this arrangement just to demonstrate to me the gentle nature of most hearts. I mean, we hear a lot of the terrorist activities of the Muslims, which clouds our impression of them. But we shouldn't forget that there are general people who are Muslims who are extremely generous-hearted and kind. So I was very much thankful for that wake-up call for me. That's such a kind man. And he was so humble at the end when he told me his name, because my other friend had come, 2 other friends, and his mood was just completely humble. So what I'm saying is this mood of humility is the most attractive mood that anyone can ever have. And who is the most humble in all of existence? Srimati Radhika. She is the most humble. So that's why she is the most attractive. She's the most attractive to Krishna, because he is attracted by that humility. My Gurudev explains this in that Bhakti Rasayan. I think it's on page 91 something. He goes through a whole list of personalities. You know, are the Brijvasis the most humble? Is Madhumangal the most humble? Is Stoka Krishna the most humble? Is Baladev the most humble? Then he says at the very end, only Radhika takes that place. What's it? Apekshika, Nagari, Apekshika, Madhya, Nagari are the most humble. Consequently, the deity form of Bhagavan is suitable to be worshipped and served by all classes of devotees. It is unnecessary to worship an imaginary form, but it is highly beneficial to worship Bhagavan's eternal deity form. So he's chastising this mullah. You don't worship an imaginary form, because the mullah, his contention is that the deity is imaginary. And to have what they call kalpana. This kalpana is imagination. This is not to be encouraged. So he's explaining very clearly, it's not imagination. The Vaishnava Sampradayas give this provision for people on these 3 levels of eligibility to worship the deity. There is no fault in this, for it is the only arrangement by which the jivas can gradually attain auspiciousness. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 11:14-26.
Yes. Yatha yathatma parimrijyate sau mat punyagata shravanadi bhidanehi tata tata pashyati vastu sukshmam chakshur yataivagnya samprayuktam.
Such a pleasure to have someone who chants the verses nicely. When I try to go through them, I'm not good at chanting the verses, but thank you, Prabhu. O Uddhav, translation, O Uddhav, as the eyes that are treated with therapeutic ointment can see very minute objects, similarly, when the heart is cleansed of material contamination by hearing and reciting the narrations of my supremely pure activities, it can see my subtle transcendental form, which is beyond the purview of matter. What a perfect verse to fit for our topic here. That by reciting and hearing the pastimes of Krishna, the consciousness is purified sufficiently that one can perceive directly Krishna's form. We've just described that the Vaishnava in his bhasya, in his meditation, he will see that form and then produce that form, or direct that form to be carved, etc., by a craftsman to reveal it to the world. The Jivatma is covered by the material mind, and in this state he cannot know himself or render service to Paramatma. However, by performing sadhan bhakti, which consists of hearing, chanting, and other devotional practices, the Atma gradually develops spiritual power. As that spiritual power according to our sadhan bhajan. Without our sadhan, this potency won't manifest. Always be attentive for our chanting. Be attentive for our various temple services. Any service we're doing, be very attentive to that sadhan, that regulated service, because it's by that regulated service only that the mercy is going to descend on the consciousness to enliven us in this way, which consists of hearing, chanting, and other devotional practices. The Atma gradually develops spiritual power. As that power increases, material bondage slackens. Of course, as that power increases, our attraction to the material energy dwindles. Why shouldn't it? What interest do we have in bricks and houses and land and farms and all the things of this temporary material world? When we know our body is temporary, we know we're just like travelers on a journey, and very soon we'll have to get off the train and leave this material body. It will just definitely disintegrate, but still we don't believe it. This is the great illusion, that we actually think we're going to live forever. And we keep holding on to our various, attachments. And the more material bondage is relaxed, the more the soul's own natural function comes into ascendancy. So beautiful language. This language to me is on a par with our Bhagavatam language. It carries the consciousness, just the language alone, like in Srimad Bhagavatam. The language of the Bhagavatam carries the consciousness to a higher state, so he can perceive these various subtle, beautiful points clearly and wake up the mind to progress into the deeper areas of the subconscious. We are Satchitananda, the same as Krishna. We've discussed these 9 similarities previously. Swarup, Bhakti Swarup, Mantri Swarup, Jnana Swarup, Nata Swarup, Ketra Gyan Swarup, Paraswarup, Swasarup, Swaprakash. So all these 9 we have those qualities, and Krishna has those qualities. Achintya, Veda, Abheda Tattva. So to appreciate, yes, we have that Krishna particle within us. We have that Satchitananda, we have that minute particle. So we have independence, and Krishna has independence. I was explaining to one devotee now, he was asking me about destiny and karma. And it's both. We have our independent desires, but Krishna also has his independent choice of whether to fulfill those desires or not. Man proposes, God disposes. So it's very, very simple. Destiny and karma, etc. It's both. Always, because it's always relationship. It always comes to this point. Krishna has independence and I have independence. It's not that Krishna is going to magically relieve me of all my previous karmas. I have to also make the journey towards submitting to him to demonstrate my absolute sincerity and nishta towards him. It's only at that moment of nishta, after anartha-nivritti, when we start to come to ruchi and asakti, that our bhakti actually begins to really boil, to connect. And then, of course, bhav bhakti is close. Bhav bhakti is in our focus then. He gradually attains direct perception of the self and, I missed a little part here. As that power increases, material bondage slackens, and the more material bondage is relaxed, the more the soul's own natural function comes into ascendancy. Thus, one gradually attains direct perception of the self and Ishvara. This self is the pure self, pure ego, and engages directly in spiritual activities. Again, this whole topic is Sambandha Gyan. I said at the very beginning, we should appreciate the name, because without Sambandha Gyan, we can't move forward. Sambandha Gyan is essential, it's the key, it's the first. Sambandha Gyan initially. This is Sanatana Goswami. He's the Ishtadev, the guru of Sambandha Gyan teachings Mahaprabhu gave for 2 months in Varanasi. And then Rupa Goswami, he's going to give us the Abhideya. What is the activity? This comes in the Dasmula afterwards. So it's a very scientific process. We're imbibing this Sambandha, and then we're going to go to the Dasmula and these 10 ontological truths that by immersing ourselves in them, will connect with the Supreme by the practice. Some people think that one should endeavor to realize the absolute truth by rejecting all that is not truth. That's like the Buddhists, they, not this, or neti, right? It's not this, not this.
Upanishads.
What is it?
The Upanishads.
Upanishads, by rejecting all that is not truth. This is known as the cultivation of dry knowledge. You might become a very brilliant scholar, but where is the anand? Where is the bliss? Where is the sweetness? Who is the repository of all sweetness? Is Srimati Radhika. That anand is the anand that we are seeking. What power does a conditioned soul have to renounce objects that are not inherently real? If they're not real, how can you renounce them? Isn't it?
Yes.
It's like you go into the bank or a bank teller. He will say, I renounce all the money in the bank.
You don't have any money.
But it's anyway. How can he renounce it? So this is fictitious to think I'm renouncing objects of this material world. I'm just giving up my attachments to them. Yes, that can take place. That's very regular. I'm actually speaking all the time rather than discussing, because for the camera, normally I would like just to open these points and have them discussed. And you also make any question or comment that you feel inspired to make. But I'm principally understanding that we are live with other devotees also, which is a strange dynamic to be sitting here with the three of us, and yet there's perhaps, 10 or 20 or 30 or more watching. What power does a conditioned soul have to renounce objects that are not inherently real? Can a prisoner who is confined in a cell liberate himself simply by desiring to do so? His objective should be to eradicate the offense that has placed him in bondage. What a beautiful example. Yes, attend to the root cause. Why is he in the jail? Because he was offensive to the government or the culture, the civilization, etc. So if he eradicates that, then he can be free from the jail, not by imagination. The Jivatma's principal defect is that he's forgotten that he is an eternal servant of Bhagavan, and that is why he is bound by Maya and forced to suffer material happiness. It's that material happiness that keeps us running. Today I was on the sea beach and these 4 Brahmins from Calcutta came and they wanted to talk to me. And, they smelt a little bit of liquor on them, and they were proudly telling me they were Brahmanas from Calcutta. But they were very polite and interested, but they had forgotten their culture. They were thinking that they were materially happy by being in Puri on the beach with the ocean, trying to enjoy the material senses. We try so hard. The general people try so hard. Anyway, I told them about Krishna. They already knew about Krishna. And they didn't know about Navadvip. They only knew about Mayapur, which I thought was interesting. Prabhupada would have been very happy that Mayapur has become bigger in people's minds even than Navadvip has become. He's made such a beautiful arrangement there for all the high-heeled Calcutta, people to come and take darshan there and to somehow influence them towards Mahaprabhu. Otherwise, they wouldn't know about Mahaprabhu. All these 4 men, they all knew about Mahaprabhu, a little bit. But they were terming it as mythology. And I hate that word when it's said. Mythology means something from your imagination, not really true, doesn't it? Isn't that what you understand from mythology? Right? You think it's something like fairy tales. In English, we say fairy tales. That means not really true. It's Krishna. Oh, it's all mythology. No.
No.
This is history.
The British.
This is itihas.
It's the British. Yeah, the British did that, for sure. Yes. Yes.
History. It is history.
Itihasyas. Yes. It's real history. Because the history they get in their history books, that's not real. That's mythology. It's just written by one man's perspective at the time. Whether he was happy or unhappy with his own situation, he would describe historically those things. The Jivatma's principal defect is that he's forgotten that he is an eternal servant of Bhagavan, and that is why he is bound by Maya and forced to suffer material happiness, distress, and repeated birth and death in this world. Such a burden. Although a person may initially be busy in sense gratification, if for some reason or another his mind becomes a little inclined towards Ishvara, and he regularly takes darshan of the deity and hears Leela Gatha, his original nature of being an eternal servant of Krishna will be strengthened. The more strength this inherent nature develops, the more competent he becomes to perceive spirit directly. The only hope of spiritual progress for those who are the least spiritually qualified is to serve the deity and to hear and chant about the Lord. That is why the Mahajans have established service to the deity. It's for the general people, to get them some sukriti, to begin to their path to association. Because without the association, nothing can really go forward. Mula. Isn't meditating on a form of the Lord within one's mind superior to imagining a form with the help of the material elements? Seems like he hasn't listened. This is true. This is true in our conversations sometimes with people. We go through a whole length of explaining, and in the end they ask him a question like this. He's still calling it imagined. He's saying, superior to imagining a form. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Gaurachand's just explained how deeply this is not imagination. It's actually the mercy of the Lord has descended to reveal his form. And Mula can't, it's a big jump to cross over that place, to accept this. So again, the brilliance of Bhaktivinoda Thakur is showing us the dynamics between this conversation and people. Some people are spiritually, like the Vaishnavas, we're spiritually going along, we can accept all these things. And we think we're talking logic. But a material conditioned soul, actually he hasn't accepted it because he hasn't got the first premise, which is Shraddha. If you don't have the first step, Shraddha, and that it's not mythology, then you won't get it. You won't catch it. So the Mula, and how brilliant is Bhaktivinoda Thakur portraying this? I think it's very brilliant anyway. That
how difficult it is to understand.
Yes, so the Mula doesn't understand. You know, it's like with Chudamani and the previous chapters. Sometimes they would understand it, and sometimes they wouldn't understand it. And like Devidas, the son of Lahari Mahashaya, sometimes he understood it, and sometimes he didn't understand it. Gaurachand Babaji. They are one and the same. The mind follows matter, and whatever it thinks of is also material. Oh, I have to understand this. The mind follows matter. They are one and the same. This means the imagined form and the Supreme Lord are the same. The mind follows matter, and whatever it thinks of is also material. We say that Brahm is all-pervading, but how can our minds actually conceive of this? We will be forced to think of it in terms of the all-pervasiveness of the sky. How can the mind go beyond this consideration? Our conception of Brahm is therefore constrained by the limitation of material space. Now, Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada would always give the story of the frog in the well. I've told this a few days. The frog in the well is trying to conceive of the immensity of the ocean. And is it 10 times as big as my well? Is it 20 times as big as my well? So we can't conceive of the Lord with our material imagination. It's not possible. Only by his divine mercy can we begin to get some sense of the greater than all pervasiveness, of the loving personality of the Lord. It goes beyond the consciousness. This is what I was saying previously. This achintya bhav, we have to be grounded in that astonishing mood. Yes, it's astonishing. I can't understand it. How wonderful. That verse describing the nature of ras, beyond imagination, heavy with wonder, and shining in the heart with pure goodness. Such is the nature of rasa, beyond imagination. We can't imagine it. If one says, I am meditating on Brahm, the experience of Brahm will be limited by material time, for it fades when one's meditation is concluded. How can the mind's meditation grasp an object that is above matter when it is conditioned by time and space, which are material phenomena? One can reject the idea that the form of the deity can consist of material elements such as earth and water, and one can imagine that Ishvara is situated in the directions or space. But still, this is all Bhuta Puja, the worship of matter. See, until the consciousness makes that leap into acceptance of the inconceivable, it will always think the deity is matter. Even regular sort of practitioners will think that fundamentally the deity is matter. We just read in the Bhagavatam how the deity of Bhadrakali, she breaks out and kills all those dacoits. Do we think that's just a story? Do we think Thakurji can't do like that? It's a very inspiring pastime. See, from Srimad Bhagavatam, if we've read Srimad Bhagavatam, then this all makes more sense. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the greatest lover of the Bhagavatam. He quotes so many verses from the Bhagavatam. He's written that Krishna Samhita, that Bhagavad Archa Marichi Mala about the Bhagavatam. He's written so many books about the Bhagavatam. So we're talking to a brother here of the Bhagavatam. He is, fully conversant with these truths, yes. How can the mind's meditation grasp an object that is above matter when it's conditioned by time and space, which are material phenomena? One may reject the idea that the form of the deity can consist of material elements such as earth and water. One can imagine that Ishvara is situated in the directions or space, but still, this is all Bhuta Puja, the worship of matter. No material object can support one's attainment of the transcendental goal. That's a statement. The only thing that facilitates this is the awakening of the inclination towards Ishvara. That's the faith, the Shraddha. And it's not material. That Shraddha is not material, because it's on the back of that Shraddha that we can actually attain the full lotus feet of Brajendranandan Shyam Sundar. This inclination is inherent within the Jivatma. It's inherent because he's part of Krishna, and is gradually strengthened and converted into bhakti when one utters the name of God, recites his pastimes, and receives inspiration from beholding the deity, Sri Vigraha. The Lord's spiritual form can be experienced only by pure bhakti, not by jnana and karma. Very powerful words here. Mula. Matter is distinct from God. I think, this is like the problem, isn't it? Is that they can't go across this inconceivable place. This is actually, what is that rooted in? It's rooted in pride. Nothing can be beyond my consciousness, the person is thinking. I can't accept the inconceivable. The scientists are thinking like this. They can't accept the inconceivable. It has to be able to be documented and understood and written down, right? This is the scientists' limited impressions. They can't go to that.
It has to be proved.
It has to be proved, yes. I read the other day in some science journal I was reading that this famous, I've forgotten his name, he was describing a realization he had. He was lying in a boat at night, and he was looking up at the stars, and he suddenly realized how great all of the cosmos was and how small he was. This is like the first realization that the Vaishnava has, how small he is. Bhakti Rakshak Shiramara gives us that beautiful explanation. The reason why we have this ego, this false ego, is to shield us from the absolute horror of our total insignificance. That's why we have the false ego. We make all these arrangements to think, yes, I am great, I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm a husband, a wife, all these different family things. This is my house, my car, my bank balance, everything to protect us from the actual reality of our devastating insignificance. I thought that was very beautiful. So Muller, matter is distinct from God. I think that it is better not to worship material objects, because it is said that Satan introduced the worship of matter to keep the living entities bound in the material world. So here we're bringing in another deluded conception. Gaurachandra, Ishvara is one without a second, and he has no rival. Everything in this world is created by him and is under his control. Therefore, he can be satisfied with any object when it is used in his worship. He's speaking strongly here. Only Ishvara actually exists, and only Ishvara created everything. He can do anything. There is no object in this world one can worship that can arouse his malice. Nothing you can worship will make him, because it's all coming from him. So anything you worship ultimately will be, it's not going to make Krishna angry. He'll elucidate his malice. For he is all auspicious. Even if a person such as Satan exists, he is no more than a special jiva under the control of God and has no power to do anything that is opposed to God's will. However, it is my opinion, it is not possible for such a monstrous living entity to exist. No activity can take place that is contrary to the will of Ishvara, nor is any living entity independent of the Lord. That final sentence is like the final nail. You can't be independent from Krishna. You just simply can't be independent. Krishna manifests. We are Bibinamsa. We are separated parts. Not even Lord Shiva is independent. Not even Brahma is independent. None of the devas are ultimately independent. I usually stop right on time at 6, so 5 more minutes. You may ask, what is the origin of sin? My answer is as follows. Vidya, knowledge, is the understanding that the jivas are servants of Bhagavan, and avidya, ignorance, is forgetfulness of this. In English language, we say forgetfulness, and people immediately think, oh, at one time I understood that, but we have forgotten, because in our deepest recesses of our subconsciousness, we do have an awareness of my eternal relationship with Krishna. The seed must be there. Kriti sadhya bhavat sadhya bhav sasaranabhida nitya siddhyasya bhavasya prakatamiti sadyate. This is in potential within the jeev already. So therefore we use the word forgetfulness, even though Bhaktivinoda Thakur says later on, this word forgetfulness is not the best description, but it's the only language that we have. If we're describing in Bengali or Hindi, perhaps it will be more, we can visualize it more realistically. Instead of imagining an extraordinary myth about Satan, I'll read that sentence again. In the hearts of those jivas who are eternal associates of Bhagavan, there is no seed of sin. One should understand this truth of avidya carefully, instead of imagining an extraordinary myth about Satan. Yes, we can use mythology about Satan. I'll tell them that next time I meet them. It means that it is not an offense to worship the Lord in material elements. Worship of the deity is most essential for those of low spiritual eligibility, and it is particularly auspicious for people of high spiritual eligibility. I always think of the Goswamis, of Rupa Goswami worshipping Govinda Dev, Sanatana Goswami worshipping Madan Mohan, Lokanath Goswami worshipping Vinod, Radha Vinod Bihari, Gokulananda. All of these personalities had their Thakurjis, beautiful. And Gopal Bhatta worshipping Radha Raman. And who else? Jiva Goswami worshipping Radha Damodar. Everyone, all these elevated, most elevated persons. But it's also described as the attractive point for non-devotees, for lower. So on all levels, deity worship can be beneficial for our bhakti. There is no logic or evidence from Shastra to support. In our opinion, it is mere dogma to think that the worship of the deity is not good. There is no logic or evidence from Shastra to support this position. I think he's fighting a losing battle here, but anyway, he's trying. Mula. The inclination towards God cannot be stimulated by worship of the deity, because the mind of one who performs such worship always remains confined to the properties of matter. Okay, I'll just finish these 2 paragraphs, then I'll stop. Gorachand. We can understand the defect in your theory by studying the ancient historical accounts of those who became great devotees. Many people began to worship the deity while they were neophytes, but as their devotional mood developed, through the association of pure devotees, their realization of transcendental and conscious nature of the deity also increased, and eventually they became immersed in the ocean of prema. The irrevocable conclusion is that satsanga is the root of all spiritual advancement. When one associates with bhaktas of Bhagavan who are fully situated in divine consciousness, one awakens transcendental affection towards Bhagavan. The more this transcendental affection increases, the more the material idea of the deity vanishes, and through great good fortune, this divine consciousness gradually unfolds. In contrast, the advocates of non-Aryan religions generally oppose deity worship. Yes, like Christianity, they call it idolatry. Islam, we're having it here face to face. These are non-Aryan. These are actually, we often call Kali Yuga religions, Christianity and Islam. They've only risen recently. The Vedic culture goes back billions of years, billions upon billions of years. It's never not been in existence. It doesn't minimize these religions because that's all those people have. So we, in our preaching to those people who are Christians or Muslims, should never undermine their faith. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says this in Shikshamrita. If you try to annihilate the faith of a non-Aryan, he's left with nothing. Let him keep his faith and build on that to demonstrate the reality. But don't take all his faith away and say you're bogus, whatever you believe is just rubbish. Then he's got nothing. Bhaktivinoda Thakur beautifully explains like that. The advocates of non-Aryan religions generally oppose deity worship, but just consider how many of them have attained spiritualization, chinmoy bhav. They waste their time in useless arguments and malice. When have you experienced true devotion to Bhagavan? I've read many of the Christian mystics' descriptions, and the highest they appear to attain is the Brahman. Thomas Merton, Thomas Aquinas, what's his name? Dark Night of the Soul, many different books. And they all just come to the Brahman. That's as far as a place that is all filled with love, is peaceful and happiness and bright. That's as far as they can actually attain. And then they only just touch that and then drop back very quickly. That's the highest of them. So, Jaiva-Dharma Ki Jai.
Jai.
Bhaktivinoda Thakur
Ki
Ki
Jai.
Jai. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha. Kripa Sindhubhyacha. Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaha. Now you have to stop it. Just stop it. Press the button. Just stop.
That is not this.
Just stop it. I'll save it. Have you stopped it? Just stop it. Don't save it. Don't do anything else. Just stop it. Because it's a whole journey. You've got to go through all kinds of things. Now you've stopped it. Is it stopped? I hope so. I never knew how to do this till the other day. I don't know what you've done. Rotate reverse. Where am I? It's still live. It's still going. You haven't stopped it.